A very good afternoon to all the participants who have joined us here today. So this is our 11-part webinar series on reports, wherein we have discussed about numerous reports in our previous sessions. So in today's session, we'll be discussing about the tax reports which are available in Zoho Books. That is how to enable the GST taxes in Zoho Books. Then we'll talk about the QRMP scheme. And lastly, we will discuss about the TDS and TCS reports which are available in Zoho Books. So this is the agenda for today. For today, we are going to divide the session into three parts. Firstly, we will talk about the GST settings in Zoho Books, how to enable the GST settings in Zoho Books, and the related report, the tax summary report in the first part. Second part, we will discuss about the QRMP scheme available in Zoho Books and how the reports available in Zoho Books can help you file the returns. Third, we'll discuss about the TDS and TCS reports. So without any further ado, let me take you into the session. So for any business, the tax filing has become a very essential part. So you will be filing your returns on a monthly or a quarterly basis, and this is a recurring process which happens on a time-to-time basis, right? So let me tell you how Zoho Books facilitates easily for this filing process. So all this starts when you enable your GST settings in Zoho Books. So all you need to do is just navigate to Settings, Taxes. Here you will have an option to enable the GST settings. You can enter your GST number, the business legal name, the business trader name, and the other details, and you can save it. So what will happen once you update this GST settings? What other things will be open? So first is your tax rates. So numerous tax rates and tax groups would be created by default. So here you can see there are some tax rates and tax groups which are created already, right? So these are default tax rates and tax group available in Zoho Books like IGST 0, IGST 12. For interstate supplies, you would be using IGST taxes, and for intrastate, you would be using the CGST and SGST, which is grouped as the GST tax. Now, other than this, if you want to create any new taxes, you can very well create them in Zoho Books. All you need to do is just click on New Tax, enter your tax name, the relevant percentage, and the tax type. I have already created certain taxes here. So for example, IGST 3. If you check this tax, I have given the 3% tax and I have selected the tax type as IGST. This is for your interstate supplies. What about your intrastate supplies, wherein CGST 1.5 and SGST 1.5 have to be applied? So for this purpose, I need to create two taxes first. So I'll click on plus new tax and I'll create two taxes with 1.5 percentages each. So here I've created one tax with CGST 1.5 and the tax type is also CGST and tax rate is 1.5. Similarly, I've created an SGST tax. So SGST 1.5, tax rate is 1.5 and the tax type is SGST. Now I need to group these two so that I can apply this in my intrastate transactions, that is within the state. So for that I need to create a new tax group. Click on the drop down here and click on new tax group. You need to enter the tax group name and select the taxes corresponding to this particular group and create it as a tax group. I've already created the tax group as well. So here is the tax group GST 3. I've selected CGST 1.5 and SGST 1.5 and I've saved it. So this can be applied in my transactions. So these taxes would be enabled. Secondly, whenever you're creating any item in Zoho Books, so you create a repository of items which you sell and purchase, right? So whatever items you're creating in Zoho Books, you can select the default tax percentage. So you can give the tax preference as taxable or non-taxable, out of scope or non-GST supply. If it is taxable, you can also set the default tax rates. That is, what is your default intrastate tax rate and what is your interstate tax rate for this particular item. So whenever you are associating this item in your transaction, this tax rate would be picked up by default. Similarly, in your contact level, the GST treatment of the particular customer would be asked for. So this GST treatment field will also be enabled once you update your GST number. So here there are various GST treatments. the person whom you're selling your goods to could be a registered, that is B2B customer, or they could be unregistered, that is B2C, or any other registrations like overseas. If you're doing an export, it's overseas. Similarly, the person could be from the special economic zone, or a deemed export, tax director, or an SEZ developer. So these details can be selected. Similarly, this is applicable for your vendors as well, that is from whom you purchase the goods or services. So now let me show you how to associate taxes in your transactions. Whenever you are creating a new transaction, now here I am going to create an invoice. I enter the relevant details, I select the customer. Now whenever I select an item, there is a tax column being displayed here. So this is the default tax rate which I have given in my items creation page. So this is displayed by default, but however if you want to change it, you can change it here. Now you can see my place of supply is Karnataka and my source of supply, that is my branch, is located in Tamil Nadu. So IGST have to be applied, so which is automatically picked by the system. So the GST tax or the IGST tax, depending on your interstate or intrastate supply, will be picked by the system by default. So here if I'm going to change my head of my place of supply to Tamil Nadu, it will automatically get changed to the GST taxes and not IGST. So this will be picked by the system by default. So this is applicable for all your transactions like your purchase bills or sales invoices, etc. Now let's go into the reports. Now we saw what are the settings which can be enabled once the GST settings is getting enabled. What are the other settings which gets enabled in Zoho Books for your items or your contacts or transaction level. So now we saw various taxes can be associated in transactions. If you want to view all the tax rates which are associated in a particular transaction for various tax rates, that is for example, if you want to view what are the transactions associated with IGST 5% or CGST 5%, SGST 5%, in that case you can always refer to the tax summary report. So this report holds the various tax percentages and their corresponding transactions. So let me customize this report for this year. So here I can see the various tax rates which have been associated in the transactions created to this particular period. Now I can see the tax name, what is the tax percentage, what is the taxable amount, that is on which this 9% tax is applied, and the tax amount pertaining to this particular percentage. This is given. If you want to view an in-depth analysis of your transactions associated with this, just click on the value. And this will take you to a report drill down wherein all the transactions associated with the particular tax percentage is being displayed. So here you will find the date, what is the particular entry number, that is your invoice number or the bill number, the transaction type in which this tax is associated to, the transaction amount, that is your invoice total or the bill total, and finally the tax amount. So this report can be customized. You can select the required date range, and also you can select the report basis as accrual or cash. So your accrual means it is based on your invoice date. Irrespective of the payment done, all the invoices would be considered. Whereas cash is based on the payment. So only if the payment is recorded for the particular transaction, it would be displayed on cash basis. You can also group it either by the tax name or by the tax percentage. Also, you can choose to display the various entities available. If you want to select only sales, you can select sales or purchases and others. You can choose whichever entry you want to display here. And you can also add quite some advanced filters. That is, if you want to view it for a particular tax percentage or a branch or particular contact name and reporting tax, you can very well use this advanced filter. So this report, you can export it in an offline file format and save it in your system. So there are numerous file formats which are supported. There's PDF format, XLS, XLSX and CSV. Also you can export it to the Zoho sheet. So now let's assume that you have numerous users in your organization and every user might not have access to the report module. But if you want to share this report specific to one particular user, you can use this share option. So when you click on share, you can select the required user and you can select the permission. They can only view it, they can view and export it, or they can view, export and schedule it. You can just click on the required option and click share. So this user doesn't have access to the reports module. However, they will be able to view this particular report since you have shared it to them. You can also print this report. The print preview would be available here, and then you can connect it to a printer and print this report. Now we saw quite some customizations available, that is, you can export it, you can share it. But how easy it would be if this report lands up in your mailbox automatically. That is, if you can automate this report into your mailbox instead of coming into Zoho Books and every time customizing this and viewing the report. So for that we have an option called scheduled report. You can use the scheduled report option to automate this report on a particular frequency. So there are multiple frequencies available here: daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly and yearly. You can select the required frequency, enter the start date, enter the time in which this report should land. You can select your email recipients. So this drop down are the users who are already added in your Zoho Books organization. So you can select the required users. And in additional recipients, if you want to send this particular report to any of your other organization users who are not a part of Zoho Books. So there could be numerous people in your organization who might or might not be a part of Zoho Books. So to those users, if you want to send this report, you can add their email addresses here manually by typing their email IDs. You can select the report format if the report format has to be PDF, CSV or XLS, and finally you can save this report. So this report is being scheduled and it will be sent every month to these particular users. So now we have seen the tax report, the tax summary report, which is available in Zoho Books, and how to enable the tax settings in Zoho Books. Next, let us talk about the QRMP scheme and the reports pertaining to it. There are two reports pertaining to this scheme. So that is the invoice furnishing facility and the PMT06 report, which is on self-assessment basis. So let's talk about the QRMP scheme and how to enable it. So if your turnover is less than 5 crore, government introduced a new scheme called QRMP. So previously, you would either be filing your returns quarterly or monthly and making the tax payments in the corresponding time period. However, in 2021, government introduced a new scheme called QRMP, wherein you can file your returns quarterly, but you can make your tax payments monthly. So this scheme is applicable for users with a turnover less than 5 crores. You can enable it in your GST portal. So how do you enable this option in Zoho Books also? Let me show you. All you need to do is go to settings, taxes. So here, once you have enabled the GST settings, that is entered your GST in, next up we have this online filing settings. Just click here, enter the reporting period as monthly, and once you do that, you will get an option to enable the QRMP scheme. So you need to check this box, enable the quarterly return filing and monthly payment of taxes scheme for my business. You can simply save this. So now there's a prompt being displayed, which means that this QRMP scheme has to be enabled in your GST portal as well. And also, once you enable this, both your GSTR1 and 3B returns will be generated on a quarterly basis from January 2021, because this scheme got introduced in January 2021 only. So once I enable it and save, two reports pertaining to this particular scheme would be enabled by default. So those two reports are nothing but the invoice furnishing facility and the PMT06 report. So how is this scheme different from the general monthly or quarterly filing? So monthly or quarterly filing means you would be filing those returns and making the taxes, right? So this return should be filed quarterly. So what should you do for the first 2 months of the quarter? So for the first 2 months of the quarter, you should furnish an IFF to the GST portal. So that can be readily done using this invoice furnishing facility report. So this report can be customized for the required month. So let me take an example. If I'm considering this quarter, if I have to customize this report for my previous month, I can click on previous month. This report holds the value of the transactions which you have done for your B2B customers, that is your registered customers. So here the first line is about taxable outward supplies made to registered persons, which means that the invoices whichever you have created, and second one is about the credit note, debit note and the refund vouchers whatever you have created. If I click on this particular value, it will take me to a report drill down wherein the transaction date and the transaction charges, taxable amount, the tax amounts would be displayed here. Similarly, the credit note, debit note and the refund vouchers created also would be displayed if I click on this particular value. So this report can be readily exported as a JSON. So this is the format which is required by the GST portal for filing of returns. You can readily export this report as a JSON and file it in the portal. So this has to be done only for the first 2 months of the quarter. So for example, let's take the January, February, March quarter. So here for the first 2 months of the quarter, that is January and February, you would be exporting this JSON and filing it in the portal, GST portal. And for the third month, that is March, you can directly push the returns from Zoho Books and proceed to the filing. So when you file those returns, you might face an error that these transactions already exist in the GST portal. That is because since we are furnishing the IFF for the first 2 months of the quarter, these transactions would be pushed again. That is why you are facing this, but you can simply ignore this and you can proceed with the filing. The other report is the PMT06 report. So what is this report and how will it help you? So as I mentioned already, your tax filing only is done quarterly, but your tax payment is done monthly, right? So how to check your tax liability? There are two methods on which this tax liability is being calculated. One is the self-assessment basis and the other one is the fixed sum method. So this report which we are generating here is based on self-assessment basis. So this is relevant to how you normally calculate your tax in your monthly or quarterly schemes, wherein your outward and inward suppliers that are liable to reverse charge will be displayed and your ITC, that is your eligible ITC, would be displayed. Finally, these two would be subtracted to display the total tax liability. This is very similar to your normal filing method, wherein all these transactions these values are captured based on your transactions in Zoho Books. One more point which I'd like to mention here is all these reports are dynamic in nature, that is it will get updated as and when you create transactions in Zoho Books. So you can refer this report to view your tax liability for the corresponding month and make the tax payment in the GST portal. So now we will move into the TDS and TCS reports which are available in Zoho Books, which is nothing but the TDS summary report and the TCS summary Form 27 EQ report. So first we'll talk about the TDS summary. So what is a TDS summary and why do we do it? So TDS is basically tax deducted at source, wherein whenever you're making a payment to your vendor, you deduct some tax and you make the payment. This tax deducted would be paid to the government. So whenever you're creating a bill, we have given you this option of deducting the TDS. Let me show you. So I'm just creating a new bill for a vendor. Here I can enter the required details. Now we have this TDS radio button wherein you can select the required tax. There are a number of taxes being displayed here. If you want to create a new TDS tax other than this, you can use this manage TDS option. So here you can create a new TDS tax, enter the relevant tax name, the tax percentage and also the required section type whichever this particular tax has to be calculated. Also you can select the required account. By default we track it under the TDS payable account. However, if you want to track it in any other liability account like section wise or any other customization based on your requirement, you can very well do it. Just create a other current liability account under accountant and chart of account and you can associate it as the TDS payable account here. Similarly, the TDS receivable account for the particular tax can also be entered here by creating an other current asset account. And if this is the higher rate TDS, you can use this option. So this will happen in two cases: when during the non-furnishing of PAN and if the previous income tax return is not filed by your vendor. So if this is a higher rate TDS section, you can very well choose this option and you can save it. So now here I'm selecting a TDS and I'm applying a section, for example 5%. So this TDS value will be applied on the subtotal of your bill value and not the total value. So this will be just the subtotal. So I will negate this TDS value and then the total would be calculated. So now once I save this particular bill, you can see this TDS payable account has been credited here. Now this particular payment has to be done to the government, right? So how do I record that payment done to the government? You can record it as an expense. I can just create a new expense. Here the expense account has to be the TDS payable account and the corresponding amount can be entered. Your GST treatment can be given as out of scope. Since you're selecting a liability account, this will impact only in your balance sheet. So here you can see the TDS payable account has been debited. So previously in my bill it was credited. Now this is debited, so the liability is already offset. So all these can be viewed in the TDS summary report. So if you want to view the transactions in which the TDS is being applied, you can check the TDS summary report. So this report, what are the details you can view? You can view the section, the total, that is the bill total, and the total after TDS deduction, that is after deducting the TDS, what is the total, and finally what is the tax deducted at the source. When you subtract these two values, you will find the tax, what is the TDS is being deducted. So this can be viewed section wise. If you want to view the transaction pertaining to this section, just click on it and this will take you to a report drill down wherein it will let us know about the vendor name, the PAN number, the branch, date and the transaction details. So this report can also be customized. So let me click on customize report and show you. Select the required date range. Again, the report basis can be accrual or cash. And also you can group it by section or vendor. Now we saw the section wise grouping. You can also select it based on vendors. So once you select it based on vendors, all the vendors for whom you have deducted TDS in this corresponding period would be displayed along with their PAN number and the other details. So this report can also be exported in the required format. So you can refer this report to file your TDS returns. As I already mentioned, this report is purely based on your bills, purchase bills. If you want to view all the transactions which are associated with the TDS payable account, you can always refer the account transaction report. Let me show you. So under reports, we have this account transaction report. This report can be customized for a particular account. So if you want to view all the transactions which are associated with the TDS payable account, you can add an advanced filter. Account is in TDS payable and you can run this report. So this report gives you an overview of all the transactions in which the particular TDS payable account has been associated and you can finally check the closing balance. The next report which we are going to discuss is the TCS summary report, which is nothing but the Form 27 EQ report. So whenever you are creating an invoice, we have an option to deduct the TCS. So what is this TCS when it comes into picture? So this TCS comes into picture wherein you collect an excess tax from your customers and you can make the payment to the government. So in the current financial year, for a customer, if the sale exceeds 50 lakhs, then TCS has to be collected. So for this customer, the sales has already exceeded 50 lakhs in this particular financial year. So whenever I'm creating any transaction for the particular customer and I try to save it, automatically a prompt would be shown in the system. That is, the total sale value for this customer has exceeded 50 lakh in the current financial year and it is mandatory to collect the TCS. I can apply the TCS. Here I have an option to apply the TCS. I can select the required tax TCS which has to be applied. As you can see, TCS will be collected over the total of your invoice, not like TDS. So TDS would be deducted on the subtotal. So you can see the subtotal, the TDS deduction and then the adjustment or round off. However, TCS would be collected on the total of the invoice. So it would include all the GST adjustment and then the TCS would be collected. So you can select the TCS section from here. If you want to create a new TCS section, you can always use this option and you can select the required TCS, give the TCS tax name, the percentage and the collection type. Like how we selected the accounts for TDS, similarly you can select it for TCS as well. You can select the other current liability account for TCS payable and for TCS receivable, you can select any other current asset account. Here there is one more option called applicable period, You can give the start date and end date so that the transactions created within these dates only the particular TCS tax can be applied and not outside of this date range. I've selected the required TCS percentage. So now if I check the journal for this particular invoice, you can see the TCS payable account is being impacted and it is credited. Since it is a liability account, it is getting credited. Now once we are making the payment to the government, just how we recorded the TDS payment, you need to enter the TCS payment as an expense. You can record a new expense. Here you need to select the expense account as TCS payable or any liability account which you are using to track your TCS. Enter the relevant amount. The GST treatment can be out of scope and you can save this. So here if I check my journal entry, you can see the TCS payable account is getting debited. So whenever you're creating an invoice, it will get credited and in your expense entry, it will get debited. So all these can be seen in this particular report called Form 27EQ, which is nothing but your TCS report. The summary of all the transactions in which you have deducted the TCS. So let me show this report. So here you can see what are the details which is available here is the name of the customer. Name of the party is nothing but the name of the customer, the PAN number, the TCS tax rate, the collection code, the collection date, the payment number, invoice number. So in all these reports which we saw, there was nothing called a payment number here, and also you can see the basis is cash by default. So for any organization, you can set the report basis for all the reports in your organization profile. So here if I go to settings, organization profile, I can set the report basis as accrual or cash. So I have selected accrual here. Despite selecting accrual, this particular report will still be in cash, and that is why the payment number is being displayed. I can always customize this report and change the report basis to accrual. I can also report it either by the collection code or by the customer name. The other customizations available for this report is based on your customer name or the branch. If you want to view this report only for one particular customer, you can use the customer name option in advanced filter. Or if you have multiple branches in your Zoho Books, you can always use the branch feature. So this report can also be exported in various formats and it can also be shared to your different users available in your organization. So we have come to the end of today's session. In today's session, we discussed about the tax settings in Zoho Books and the tax summary report, which will give you an overview of all the tax rates and the associated transactions. Next, we spoke about the QRMP scheme, when this QRMP scheme came into existence, to which tax percentage or turnovers will this be applicable, and how these two reports can help you with the filing of the same. That is nothing but the invoice furnishing facility and the PMT06 report. Then we discussed about the TDS summary and the TCS summary reports. So we talked about the TDS, how to associate a TDS in a bill and how to create a new TDS section and how to offset the TDS payment done. Similarly for TCS also, we learned about what is TCS, when this is applicable, how to deduct the TCS in your invoices, and finally make the TCS payment to your government. So I hope this session was useful. So now if you have any queries related to this session, you can please post them in the questions tab and we will start answering your questions shortly. Please post them in the questions tab of Zoho Books. We have a question from Mr. Vinod Kumar. TDS rounding off option not available. TDS cannot be paid in decimals. So we have an option to edit the TDS amount. Let me show you. So whenever you're creating a purchase bill, let me take this bill for instance. Now this bill is available. I have deducted the TDS. So here I can see based on the percentage applied, it is 25.01. I can always edit this value and I can update it. So it can be updated to whole numbers and you can save this. So you can use this pencil icon option to edit the default value available. So the next question is on TDS paid and balance payable. If there is any report to know the same. So you can always refer the account transaction report wherein you can view all the transactions pertaining to that particular TDS. And also I believe you have asked how to know if the TDS is paid against the specific section. So by default, we track all this under the TDS payable account as we have already discussed. So in the account transaction report, you can customize it for the TDS payable account, which is nothing but the default account which is associated to all TDS sections. If you want to view a section wise bifurcation here, you can always create a required account under accountant chart of accounts. You can create a new account of type other current liability, enter the required TDS account with the section name, and you can save this. Associate this particular account in your TDS sections. So for example, so here we have the default tax rates which are already available. You can always edit this and associate the required TDS payable account. So if you wanted section wise, you can create a account for this 194H and associate it here for this particular TDS percentage. So that whenever you're customizing the report, whenever you're viewing the account transaction report for the particular section, you will always know what is the percentage that is TDS being collected and whatever TDS is yet to be paid to the government. So the next question is on how to get a report for advances received for GST calculation on advances. So these details are available in our GSTR1 report, that is summary of outward supplies. So in the reports module, we have the summary of outward supplies report, wherein you will find details related to the advances as well. So consolidated statements of advance received. So this section will show you the details on what are the advances received. Next question is about TCS and invoices. So TCS is nothing but a tax which is collected in your invoices if the sale for the particular customer in the current financial year has exceeded 50 lakhs. So the TCS option prompt would be shown if the sale has already exceeded 50 lakhs, so that you can collect this TCS and make the payment to the government. So next question is on how to download the summary of outward supplies report for GST filing. Yes, just like how we exported the IFF report, we have this option. Let me show you. So just go to reports. Under taxes, you will find the summary of outward supplies, which is nothing but the GSTR1 report. Click on this, customize it for the required period. For instance, if you're doing the filing of the previous month, just click on previous month. You can export it as JSON, which is the format required by the GST portal for filing, and you can file it in the portal. So next question is based on exempted sales details does not appear in GSTR1 summary in detail or invoice level, but it shows only the amount. So as per the GST reports, all our reports are generated as per the GST portal's requirement. So whatever is the portal's requirement, we have designed the reports in such a way so that here in this particular section, that is exempted sales, only the total value is shown, as the invoice details are not requested by the portal. Hence, the values are not being displayed transaction wise, but in total. So next question is about the TDS. So I have passed journal entries which include TDS payable account and transactions, but in TDS summary report, I am unable to find these transactions. Please let me know how to find these journals. So as I already mentioned, the TDS summary report is purely based on your purchase bills and not any other transactions. If you want to view the other transactions associated with that particular account, you can always refer the account transaction report. Next question is about journal entries with GST are not showing in GST tax report. So as of now, in journals, you will not be able to apply any tax sections. Hence, the journals will not be displayed in your that is GST reports. Only your transactions created, that is your invoices, bills, vendor credits and credit notes, debit notes, these details will only be displayed in your GST reports. So next question is about unused credits in a vendor. So I believe you're asking how do vendors unused credits get updated for a vendor. So here there are two cases. Let me explain it. So for a particular vendor, the unused credits can be displayed. This particular unused credits can be displayed for two cases. So one is whenever when you make an advance payment. So whenever you make an advance payment to your vendor, then it will be displayed as unused credits. Similarly, whenever the vendor issues you any debit note, you will create it as a vendor credit in Zoho Books. This will also get accumulated as unused credits. You can apply it to the upcoming bills so that you can utilize the same. So when you click on this unused credit value, you can always apply this to the bills, existing bills or upcoming bills, or you can refund the same using the excess payment option. So next question is about the GST reconciliation. So GST reconciliation with portal must be there. Can we expect it in near future? In Zoho Books, we already have the GSTR 2 and 2B reconciliations wherein the data can be fetched from portal and done. Let me show you. So once you enable the GST online settings in Zoho Books, we have an option of reconciling your GSTR 2 and GSTR 2B. Here you can fetch the transactions from the portal. So you can always fetch it from the portal under reconciliations tab. You can pull it from GSTN, you can match them, and you can finally reconcile them as well. Similarly, this is available for GSTR 2B as well. Next question is about generating TCS report at end of the quarter. So the reports can be generated for any time period as required. So as far as your TCS report is concerned, you can customize it for a required date range. So you can just go to the TCS summary report. You can click on the calendar icon here and you can select the required period. If it is for this quarter, you can select it as this quarter, or if it is for previous quarter, you can select it. If it is the quarter even before this, you can always use the custom option here. For instance, if you want to generate the report for the January to March quarter of 2023, you can use this custom option to generate the report. So this will be displayed. So journal entries with TDS is not showing in the TDS report. So as I already mentioned, your TDS summary report is purely based on your bills, purchase bills only. If you want to view the other transactions pertaining to this TDS payable account, you can always refer the account transaction report. So next question is about how to book credit card entries in Zoho. So we have an option of adding your bank or credit card accounts in Zoho Books. Let me show you. We have this banking module wherein you can add your bank or credit cards by clicking on this option. You can just click on this. You can use a service provider to connect and fetch the automatic feeds, or if you want to add them manually, you can use this add manually option. Here you can select the account type, credit card, enter your account name, what currency does it belong to, and you can save this. So next question is based on TDS. TDS is calculated based on invoices, but payment has to be done based on the payment made in a month. So I presume you're asking that whatever TDS is deducted in your vendor bill, the TDS has to be paid to the government based on the payments done for the particular bill or not, right? So if that's your question, we have an option to customize the report based on cash basis. So in the TDS summary report, you can click on customize report and you can select the report basis as cash. So when you run this report, whatever bills for which the payment is already done will only be displayed here and not the transactions in which the TDS is deducted. Next question is how to set off the unearned revenue. So to explain about unearned revenue is the account wherein we track all your customer advances. Whenever you have received any customer advance or any excess payment from your customers, we track it as unearned revenue in Zoho Books. So once you apply this excess payment to your invoices, this unearned revenue account will automatically be set off. So you can apply the advances or the excess payments or you can refund them back to your customer so that this unearned revenue value will be updated accordingly. So next question is about how to use unused credits for journals. So as far as Zoho Books is concerned, for your customer and vendor transaction, journals cannot be used. So your unused credits can be set off only against your purchase bills or sales invoices. So you can apply them to the invoices or bills and set it off. So next question, where do we find the customer advance report? So for customer advances, we do not have a separate report as such, but you can always refer the customer balance summary report. So under receivables, you have the customer balance summary report. Here you will be able to view the invoiced amount received and the closing balance. If you want to view the advance payments done, you can use this unused advance payment option and the advance payments option. So these two columns will give you more details about the advance payments done to your customer, received from your customers and which are still unused. So if you have already utilized it, this unused payment will be updated accordingly, or if it is yet to be utilized, it will be the same as advance payment. So we have a question from Mr. Nikhil. How to check state-wise GST reports? So in Zoho Books, we have this option called branches, wherein if you're using multiple GSTINs in your organization, we have this option called branches. So you might have enabled them under settings and branches, and different GST numbers would have been associated to it. All these GST numbers would have been added in your GST settings. So all your tax reports will be generated for each GSTIN separately only. So for example, let me show you the GSTR1 report, that is summary of outward supplies report. Here if you check, there is a GSTIN drop down being displayed. So this drop down can be chosen to see for which GSTIN the report has to be viewed. And you can export this report and file it in the portal. So next we have a question from Ms. Meha Maheshwari. Can we check tax summary branch wise? Yes, very well, it can be done. So let me show you. So the tax summary report can be customized for each branches. Just click on tax summary, customize report. You can use the advanced filter option to customize this. Select branch is in and the required branch. Once you apply this, the tax summary report corresponding to that particular branch will alone be displayed. So next we have a question from Ms. Mamta. How to check TDS received from customer invoice wise? So we do not have a separate report for this, but however you can always check the account transaction report for this purpose. So just navigate to the account transaction report, customize the report. Just how we selected the TDS payable, select TDS receivable. This is the default account which we use to track the TDS received from a customer, or if you're using any other account you can use that, you can select that as well, and you can group it by contact so that the transactions pertaining to that particular customer would be displayed. So here I can see the TDS receivable for the particular invoice and the customer payment has been deducted. So next we have a question from Ms. Bhagyashri. How to send an invoice to the client with TDS deduction? So as far as TDS in your customers, that is invoices, is concerned, you can deduct it in your sales invoices directly, or you can deduct it when you're recording the payment. So when you're creating an invoice for a customer, we have this option to deduct the TDS. So you can use this radio button and you can enter the required tax percentage here. Or if you do not know what is the percentage of TDS exactly to be deducted, you can always deduct it when you're recording the payment. So when I'm recording the payment also, I can use this tax deducted yes TDS income tax option to enter my amount withheld, that is TDS deducted. So thank you so much for your valuable time in this session. So I believe most of your queries were answered. If you have any further clarifications, you can reach out us on our toll-free number, or you can drop an email to support.india@zohobooks.com. So you have been such an engaging audience. Thank you so much for your time. I believe the session was useful. So we'll meet again in the next session. Thank you so much. This is Priyadarshini.